Welcome to the Sex Science Podcast, where we turn the latest peer-reviewed research on intimacy and sexuality into fun, accessible conversations. Generated by AI and fact-checked by experts, the Sex Science Podcast was created by LaShaw to empower you through knowledge. So, join us as we explore pleasure, relationships, human connection, and everything in between.
Hey everyone, welcome back for another deep dive with us. Today we're going to be looking at love languages. Gary Chapman's book, The 5 Love Languages, it sold like 20 million copies or something crazy like that. But we're going beyond the hype today. We're looking at the science behind it all.
Yes. We're going to be digging into a research paper that really breaks down the evidence for love languages.
Awesome. So before we really get into it, can we just quickly recap what the love languages actually are?
Absolutely. So Chapman's theory is all about these 5 ways that people give and receive love.
Okay.
So we've got words of affirmation, quality time, receiving gifts, acts of service, and physical touch.
Okay. I think most people listening are probably familiar, but it never hurts.
It never hurts.
Have a little refresher.
Exactly. And the idea is that everyone has a primary love language.
Right.
The one that really makes them feel loved. And that's how they tend to show love to others too.
Okay. So if my love language is quality time, I'm going to feel most loved when my partner, spends time with me.
Yes. And you're going to naturally want to show your love by planning special dates or just hanging out one-on-one.
Got it. And so the whole premise of the book is that relationship problems often happen because partners are speaking different love languages.
Yeah. They're trying to communicate, but they're just not quite understanding each other's needs.
So it's they're both saying, I love you, but in completely different ways.
Exactly. And that's where things can get tricky. But that's where this research paper comes in.
Ooh. Tell me more.
It challenges some of these core assumptions about love languages.
Okay, spill the tea. Which assumptions are we talking about?
All right, so first up, the idea that everyone has one dominant love language.
Okay.
Research actually suggests that people tend to find meaning in all 5 love languages, not just one.
Interesting. So it's not really an either situation.
Nope. More we all appreciate different ways of giving and receiving love. I might really love pizza.
Pizza's the best.
Right. But that doesn't mean I never crave a salad or a big bowl of pasta.
Okay, I love this analogy. That makes total sense. So instead of having one love language, it's more like we have a whole menu of ways we like to give and receive love.
Exactly. And the research backs that up. When studies use scales to measure people's preferences for each love language, they find high ratings across all 5.
Interesting. Okay, so one assumption down.
Yeah.
What's the next one?
All right, so the second assumption is that there are 5 distinct and separate love languages.
Okay, 5 distinct categories.
Okay. Sounds right. Well, it seems that way, but research on the structure of love languages has been pretty inconsistent.
Okay, hold on. When you say structure, what do you mean exactly?
So it's basically looking at how these different love languages group together statistically. Imagine trying to put all music into 5 genres.
Okay.
You've got rock, pop, country, but then what about all the subgenres and all the blends in between?
Right, that gets messy fast.
Yeah, exactly. And it's kind of the same with love. Trying to fit it neatly into 5 boxes might not capture the full complexity of how people actually experience it.
So the idea of 5 distinct love languages might need a little tweaking.
Yeah, maybe a bit more nuanced than that.
Okay, that's 2 assumptions down. What's the third one?
This one is a biggie. The idea that having matching love languages is the key to relationship bliss.
Oh, really? So speaking the same love language doesn't guarantee a happy ending?
That's what the research seems to indicate. Multiple studies have looked at whether couples with matching primary love languages report higher relationship satisfaction, and the answer is no.
Wow. I would have thought that having the same love language would make things so much easier.
Right. It seems intuitive, but it turns out it's not that simple.
Okay, so we've kind of debunked some major myths about love languages here.
We're shaking things up a bit.
But I'm curious now. What does the research actually suggest is important for strong relationships? If it's not all about matching love languages, then what is it? The paper actually suggests that while the love languages might not be scientifically validated, the concept's popularity, it really does highlight a real need that people have.
You mean the need to feel understood, like your partner really gets you?
Exactly. People crave that connection.
Yeah.
And even though the love languages have flaws, they do give us a starting point for those conversations. Okay. So even if those categories aren't perfect, the love languages give couples a way to talk about their needs and preferences.
Precisely. And having that shared language, even if it's not perfectly accurate, It's a powerful first step towards understanding each other.
I see.
Ah.
So where do we go from there? If we're not just matching love languages, what should we be focusing on?
Well, the research really points to this concept called responsiveness as a key ingredient for healthy relationships.
Okay, responsiveness.
Mm-hmm.
Can you break that down a little more? What does that look like in a relationship?
It really goes beyond just knowing their favorite love language. It's about being attuned to your partner's needs, their emotions,
Okay.
and responding in a way that makes them feel seen.
So it's not just about grand gestures or speaking their love language perfectly. It's about those smaller everyday moments of understanding.
Yeah. Like, for example, if your partner is going through a super stressful time at work, they might need more reassurance and quality time, even if their typical love language is acts of service.
So you're saying it's about being flexible, adapting to their needs in the moment, rather than sticking to like a rigid formula.
Exactly. It's about recognizing that needs can change and being open to growing together with your partner.
That makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
But how do we actually do that? How do we become more responsive partners? Does the research have any practical tips?
Well, one of the suggestions from the researchers is to think of love like a balanced diet.
Ooh, I love a good metaphor. Tell me more. How does love relate to a balanced diet?
Just like our bodies need a variety of nutrients to function at their best, relationships need a diverse mix of love expressions to thrive.
Okay, so it's like we need to make sure we're serving up a full plate of quality time, words of affirmation, acts of service, all the good stuff.
Exactly. And just like with food, the specific nutrients someone needs can vary depending on, their individual needs and their circumstances.
So someone who's feeling insecure might need an extra serving of reassurance and affection.
Exactly. It's about being sensitive to those needs and responding accordingly instead of assuming a one-size-fits-all approach.
This is really making me rethink how I think about relationships. It's not about finding someone who checks all the boxes on some love language list.
Right.
It's about being willing to understand and adapt to each other's unique ways of expressing love.
I love that. It's like going beyond those basic labels and really tuning into what actually makes your partner feel loved and appreciated.
Exactly. And that takes effort, communication, willingness to grow together.
Absolutely.
Wow. This has been a really thought-provoking conversation. The love languages, they're not perfect, but they could be a good starting point for talking about what we need in our relationships. But it sounds like it's really about going beyond those categories and just being more responsive partners. So how do we actually do that? Like, what does it look like to be responsive to our partner's needs, especially when those needs are always changing?
That's the million-dollar question, right? It's not always easy, but I think it boils down to being present, paying attention, and having those open and honest conversations.
Yeah, communication is key.
Absolutely. Think of it less like checking off boxes on a love language list and more like learning a whole new language, your partner's unique language of love.
Ooh, I like that. That's a great way to put it.
Yeah.
So it's like we're trying to understand the nuances of how they communicate what they need and want, even if they're not always saying it directly.
Exactly. You got to be curious. You got to want to learn what makes them tick.
Yeah, and it's a two-way street too, right? We need to be able to communicate our own needs clearly and respectfully.
100%. Responsiveness has to go both ways.
This deep dive has honestly given me a whole new perspective on relationships. It's not about finding someone who fits perfectly into our idea of what love should be.
Right.
It's more about being open to understanding each other's needs and adapting to those unique ways of expressing love.
And that takes effort communication. A willingness to grow together.
Absolutely.
Right.
Well, this has been such an insightful conversation. I feel like I have so much to think about and apply to my own relationships.
Me too. It's been a pleasure chatting with you.
Likewise. And to everyone listening out there, I hope this deep dive has sparked some new ideas for you too. Think about the ways you give and receive love and how you can become a more responsive partner. Go beyond those 5 love language categories and embrace the beautiful complexity of human connection. Thanks for joining us, and keep those minds curious.
Thank you for listening to the Sex Science Podcast, brought to you by LaShaw. We hope that you learned something new about the wonderful world of human intimacy and sexuality, and join us next time as we dive into more fascinating research. And remember, science is for you. Music for this podcast was produced by SoundRaw.